Hello? Is anyone there? Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. I think you can. I see a bunch of viewers here. And folks can hear me. Would they mind just typing in the comment thread saying, yeah, they can? Folks can hear me. Would they mind? Okay. There are a couple minutes before we start to tune in. Comment functionality is working okay because I want to spend most of this time answering your questions. So let's just see that that is the case. Answering. Oh, great. Oh, perfect. Oh, the comments are showing up in a different place. Okay. Hence the confusion. It's showing up on the YouTube feed, whereas I was pulling it up on the Hangout. Okay, great. So it looks like you can all hear me and I see your comments, so all is well. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ani. I'm a product manager on the Physical Web team here at Google, and want to give you a brief update on the Physical Web, sort of what we've been up to and some of the latest news around Nearby. But mostly leave the time for you guys to ask questions and sort of chime in about any thoughts that you might have about the Physical Web. We'll take it however you want to. And we'll keep going until around 1:30 Pacific time, so for the next 25 minutes or so. But to kick things off, so as you all might have seen the news on the Physical Web Discuss mailing list, over the next 6 weeks, starting actually at the end of this week, what we're going to be doing is turning off notifications in Nearby, re-enabling notifications by default on Chrome on Android. This is just a temporary thing. It's not meant to be a permanent transition to Chrome on Android. We're still committed to Nearby as being the main notification surface. But we actually experienced sort of a brief regression in the Nearby product. There was sort of a last-minute bug during the next release of Nearby. And so what the bug actually sort of enabled was notifications actually persisting even after a user sort of leaves the vicinity of a beacon. And so what would end up happening is you accumulate a bunch of notifications on your notification shade and your lock screen, which we didn't want. It's a bad user experience. So it was a tough call ultimately as to whether we should find a way last minute to sort of sneak in a fix or just disable Nearby for this particular 6-week period. But ultimately, the team decided to go with that option in the interest of the long-term health of the product. But what we're hoping is that most users won't ultimately end up noticing, because Chrome on Android will still fire these notifications, still a low priority notification, and will look and feel roughly the same way. There'll be different text on the notification, but it's still the overall same experience to end users. But I understand that there might be a lot of questions about this, so wanted to answer them to the best that I can and give you all a heads up too before this actually ends up going live towards the end of this week. So that's all for me from a Nearby update perspective, and happy to sort of answer more questions about Nearby or sort of chat about Physical Web more broadly, tell you about some of the things that we're kicking around on the team, some of the things we're brainstorming, and perhaps give you sort of a taste of what we're excited about that's coming down the pipeline. But I will monitor this chat thread to see if there are any questions. Okay, so don't see anything yet, but maybe what I can do is tell you a little bit about. Oh, okay, something just came in. How long will the change back to Chrome take? So good question. So we're trying to roll it out in the next Chrome release, which is slated to go out in the middle of October, which we're close to right now. So it's always hard to say exactly which date the next version of Chrome will go out. It's variable based on sort of any last-minute bugs that might be introduced. Many teams that are working on Chrome, but you should start to see Chrome notifications go active in the next week or so. But sorry, I couldn't give you a precise date there. Meanwhile, okay, another question came in. Any plans to make Physical Web part of more popular Google iOS apps? Chrome on iOS is not ubiquitous, but Google Maps, Gmail, etc. are. Another good question. So there's nothing imminent yet, is sort of the short-term answer I'll give you. I mean, we of course are sort of experimenting and exploring all sorts of different concepts, but there's nothing imminent on the roadmap that I can speak of. That being said, Chrome on iOS actually is one of Google's better distributed apps on iOS. It's not as ubiquitous as it is on Android, but we still see a very healthy amount of usage of Chrome on iOS. So we do think it actually is a good vehicle on iOS. That being said, today's implementation in Chrome on iOS is still fairly hidden. It's displayed in the Today View widget, which requires quite a few initial upfront steps for a user to get started. We think it's a great experience once users have done that setup, but it is a lot of work to get started. So one of the things we are exploring is what are some ways that we can make the experience even better within Chrome on iOS. We've been experimenting with and sort of exploring a bunch of different surfaces in Chrome where the integration might make sense. And we actually kicked around a thread on the Physical Web Discuss mailing list, I think a couple months ago, sort of explaining some of the concepts that we were brainstorming and sort of inviting the community to join us in those explorations. A couple things that we are excited about is potentially surfacing URLs in the Omnibox. So when you tap on the Omnibox and you're near a Bluetooth beacon that's broadcasting your URL, imagine if that just appeared in the context of all the other Omnibox suggestions. We think that could be interesting. Still don't know whether it makes full sense, but we think the user experience could be something worthwhile. Also potentially exploring what it might look like on the new tab page and various other places on Chrome on iOS. Okay, I'm just going to go in order. So next is will nearby be suppressed by the new Chrome? So it's actually not nearby that's being so Chrome isn't suppressing nearby. Nearby is, if you will, turning itself off, turning off notifications because of that bug that I mentioned. And so just for the next release of nearby, it won't be firing notifications, and Chrome will be. But what we intend is following the release after that, nearby will be re-enabled and Chrome will again be suppressed. So this is just going to be a temporary change to the ultimate goal of having nearby being the main surface for notifications. But over the 6-week period, just to be clear, nearby will not be showing notifications, and on some devices this is already the case. Okay. Next question from Andy. Will users need to do anything to get updates from Chrome, or will it be on for everyone, subject to having Bluetooth and location on? It is the latter. It will be on for everyone. As long as you're updated to the latest version of Chrome, you have Bluetooth on, you have location on, and Chrome has the location permission. So that's still the same requirement as was before, which means you've gone to a website that might have asked you for permission, like maps.google.com or even the main google.com page, or really any website that's asked for permission. You granted Chrome that permission, then you'll receive physical web notifications as you would have even before nearby. Updates, I mean, yep. So those notifications will be on by default. Okay, a question from Timothy. Can you provide or give a reference to physical web data flow? Is there a summary of the function of the physical web server and how it varies by Eddystone? message format. Yeah, I can give you sort of a brief overview of sort of how the physical web works from a system architecture perspective, and also encourage you to go to our website, physical-web.org, which I'll just type in the comments. I'm sure a lot of folks have already seen it, but for folks who might not have, encourage you to go there. And we've go into a lot of details about this, but sort of the TLDR, if you will, is there's sort of three main components to the physical web architecture. There's the beacons themselves, which are sort of flashed with the Eddystone format. There are sort of software applications that sit on your mobile device, whether it's Chrome or the Android operating system itself, that scan for these URLs. And then finally, there's the physical web service, which ingests URLs and outputs metadata, and also sort of spam filters and ranks these URLs before allowing clients to display them in some sort of a consumable way. So as far as what the data looks like, it starts with the developer configuring Eddystone beacons to have URLs embedded in the beacons using the Eddystone URL sort of frame type. Then client devices with applications such as Chrome, nearby, third-party applications that folks here might have written as well, scan for these URLs, pass them up to a physical web service, which is optional. You can circumvent that if you choose to do the resolutions of the URLs locally. But we've noticed a lot of deployments, including sort of the ones that are integrated with Google properties, do pass it up to a physical web service that resolve the URLs, unpack metadata such as title, URL, icons, and also rank and filter the URLs before ultimately giving them back to the client to display to the user in whatever way that might make sense. And the way Chrome and Nearby do it is through notifications today. Hopefully that answers your question at a 10,000 foot level, and happy to sort of chat more if you have more questions. Okay, so next question. Can there be a gap of no physical web notifications on an Android device with the latest Chrome and Google Play services installed? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. It's possible on certain devices that is the case, where you might be part of the bucket today that already is not receiving Nearby notifications, but Chrome, the latest version of Chrome, still hasn't shipped, where Chrome will show notifications. But we're hoping that the impact will be minimal and will be no more than a week. But it is possible, unfortunately. Okay, next question. Any Eddystone URLs haven't worked since last Friday. Is these problems connected to new update, and how long will that last? So would love to hear a little bit more details around specifically what the issues were. I think we mentioned this sort of on Twitter and on GitHub. Some of the issues we had last week were actually because of Google's implementation of the physical web service. We had sort of a caching issue with some of the URLs, which should have since been fixed. But there's a different set where it's possible that notifications are not firing because of the recent shift to Nearby. So for issues pertaining to that, it shouldn't last for any more than a week, as I mentioned, because Chrome will then start to fire notifications. But all physical web service related issues related to that bug from last week should be resolved. But if that's not the case and you're still experiencing issues, would love to hear more. And one way to I think help debug it and to make sure that we can be really actionable in our help is checking to see whether it works through other physical web clients for you. You can use the physical web open source apps from the Play or App Store, depending on whether you have an iPhone or an Android device. And if it resolves there, then we'll be able to isolate the problem more. I'll still hang loose here for the next 10 minutes or so. If you guys have any more questions, I'm trying to think of, in the meantime, what are some things that I could tell you that might be helpful. So I mentioned some of the UX explorations that we're going through on the team, looking at in the UI where it might make sense to showcase physical web URLs. And you'll likely start to see some of our early rollouts on iOS first before Android if we end up going through with some of these. Yeah, I wanted to give you that heads up. Trying to think if there's anything else that would be of note to this community. Another thing that we're exploring doing, sort of this is a level of detail, is perhaps too detailed, but as an FYI, on the physical web service right now, our user agent sort of acts as Googlebot. And so, if on your service you have a robots.txt or something that asks you to avoid Googlebot, we've respected that up until now. But the questions that we've heard a lot from deployers is, can we change the user agent to something that's more physical web specific, so you can do redirector level analytics, or just have a better sense of which of these bots are coming, which of these sort of automated crawls are coming from the physical web service versus a different sort of Google agent. And so we're working on actually rolling this out, where we're going to change the user agent to something that is a physical web specific agent. I think we'll call it Google Physical Web, and we'll probably talk about it either on the mailing list or on a GitHub issue. I wanted to let you know as an FYI, in case you saw additional traffic go to your server, whereas before you might have filtered it out with your robots.txt. So that is a change that's upcoming, and look for more details soon. Okay, looks like there's a new question. Okay, from a non-tech perspective, do you have any figures on what percentage of Android devices have all the required settings enabled to get a physical web notification? Yeah, it's a good question. So for nearby, there's two major criteria. One is, given that you have a sufficiently advanced operating system, Jelly Bean, MR2 and above, nearby will work for those. So given that you have an Android device that falls into that bucket, which are most Android devices, then you need to have Bluetooth turned on and location enabled. So as far as Bluetooth goes, we run surveys on this to get a sense of what percentage of, at least for the US, of Android users have Bluetooth turned on. We see it's roughly something like 65% or so, so fairly high number. Increased a lot over the last few years, we think, especially driven by sort of IoT use cases, and also cars actually. Bluetooth to be able to pair with their car. So that's a pretty big bucket as far as Bluetooth goes. As far as the percentage that have location turned on, unfortunately, we can't actually share that number externally, but it is a majority of devices. I can tell you that much. I can share that much. So more than half of the Android devices out there have their phones in a setting such that they can receive these notifications by default without having to do anything more. As precise as perhaps you're hoping for, but it's the most I can do. Okay, another question. In early December, I will conduct a tutorial in San Jose in which I'll try to lead the audience through receiving physical notifications of both Android and iOS. Hope this transition goes well. Yes, by early December, you should absolutely start to see that, and you'll start to see the behavior that you saw, over the past few months, where nearby was the default way of receiving physical web notifications on Android. From on iOS allowed you to see it through the Today view. I'm curious, I guess, if folks don't have more questions, what are some of the things that you guys have been doing with the physical web? Would love to get a sense of what are some of the deployments that you guys are working on or experimenting with, challenges that you faced, your sense of whether sort of users, as they walk into your spaces, do interact with the physical web, what works, what doesn't. Unfortunately, I guess this isn't two-way. It would perhaps be a lot easier if you could speak as well. But I would love to hear through the comments at the very least, and echo some of that here and sort of learn more. Looks like there's one deployment where Timothy, you're leading a tutorial. What do you mean by that? I'm curious. Is it you're attending a meetup or something where you're telling people about the physical web, or is it actually a sort of production-ready deployment? I'm starting to see some things. We're doing the table tennis European Championships next week. Oh, super interesting. Broadcasting, and how are you, I guess, marketing it to users to look for physical web notifications? And and to actually take part in the experience. That sounds super cool. If you could ping me directly afterwards about that deployment, would love to learn more about it. Oh, but meanwhile, it looks like there's another question that came in. So what does your beacon do using URL format messages? So what you must be asking about is how you could surface URL attachments through Nearby. We want to give developers choice in how they can use the physical web, and with Nearby, what you can do is either configure URL directly on the beacon using Eddystone URL, or you can register your beacons and then associate a URL attachment through the cloud, through the Google Beacon Registry, to be able to broadcast that URL when users are nearby. So the difference is by registering your beacons, you have the option of potentially integrating with other Google products as well that source attachments from registered beacons, but you have to trade that off with the extra work that you have to do to register a beacon. It does require more effort on the developer part, and it also requires you to sort of store your data in the Google registry. Some developers are okay with it. Some would prefer to sort of retain their data and not share it with a third-party registry. And so ultimately, that's the main difference. You have the option potentially in the future of integrating with additional Google products, but you do have to register your data with Google. So it's up to you as a developer as to what you'd like to do. Hope nothing goes wrong with the deployment. I hope so too. As I said, please let me know more about the details of that. We can chat about making sure that we do everything we can to ensure that there's as many users as possible who've gone through that transition to Chrome. But as I mentioned, it's hard to say exactly what date at which the new version of Chrome on Android will go live. So yeah. It's a 2.5-hour tutorial at the San Jose Embedded Systems Conference. Okay. Another question: are you planning to expand physical web to support Chromecast, GPS, other technologies? So Nearby, actually today, the notifications surface Eddystone URL. It also surfaces sort of nearby devices that you might have purchased where you want to set up, including Chromecast. And so yeah, over time we don't intend on physical web to being sort of protocol specific. Bluetooth makes a lot of sense today, and Eddystone beacons make a lot of sense. But you can imagine, in the future there might be other protocols that also make sense. Source efforts, we've actually started to explore some of these using things like MDNS or this idea of Fat Beacon that we've introduced, where you can source sort of specially packaged content that might be embedded in a beacon to allow you to access content even when it's offline. But these are all just sort of early explorations. We're still trying to vet whether there's significant use cases for it, where it warrants integrating into Chrome or Nearby. But we're certainly open to it if we feel like there's a use case for it, and that we can do it in a security-conscious way. My favorite use case, I'm reading Timothy's comment here. My favorite use case is distributing current tide times, although I haven't deployed this. Hope to deploy this pending time and funding. That'd be cool. I'm guessing putting it by deploy that, I'm wondering. Like on the beach or something? Should be pretty cool. Or like by docks. Integrating with other products means that I have to understand a bunch of other Google products, increases other correct. Yes, that is correct. Certainly true. So the way we think about sort of Eddystone URL and the physical web is that it's a simple, lightweight way of getting started where it doesn't require a lot of upfront work. You just buy a beacon, you configure it, doing with upfront, 5 minutes or so of work, and you set it and forget it. That's the idea. Cool. So we have another couple minutes or so before I'll sign off. But I hope that this was helpful, and it answered some questions that you might have been having about the Nearby transition. I know it's challenging, sort of dealing with a lot of the different UX transitions that we've introduced over the past few months, and appreciate you all for sort of bearing with us as we're trying to get the user experience right. But you know, we as Google and we as Chrome are very much committed to sort of physical web long term. So these temporary transitions that you see are just us trying to figure out the product and figure out a user experience that makes sense for users. But we do intend on sort of Nearby being sort of the long term home for physical web on Android, and are sort of grateful for you all for bearing with us as we're going through that transition. Oh, saw another question. If you're nearby when a URL is resolved, points to a landing page by modifying sure URL it's redirected to another page. Maybe due to caching. Will this be resolved in the next deployment? So I'm just trying to make sure I fully understand your question. It seems like you have issues around, or you're experiencing issues around seeing duplicate results in Nearby when you're by a repeat beacon. Will this be resolved in the next deployment? Fortunately, I don't have specific details on that. If you could follow up more offline, either emailing me directly or chatting on the GitHub, I can get back to you. But don't have an answer, unfortunately, off the top of my head. Looking through to see if there's more questions. Have some activity at San Jose Community Center. Would like to collaborate. Great. People are meeting each other, working on deployments. This is what we're all about. Google Beacon Story has gotten much better the last 12 to 18 months. I hope so. We're working to sort of more prominently feature it in to make it easier ultimately for developers and deployers such as yourselves to use it. Oh, the double notifications aren't even reported on GitHub. Okay, great, cool. So we are at 1:30, and unfortunately I have to sign off. But again, thank you all for tuning in, and for any questions that unfortunately I might not have gotten to now. You know, either ping me or on our GitHub. Thanks everyone, and until next time. Oh, sorry, just saw that last minute question come in. If you have any more questions, how can we take contact? Either sort of email directly on physical-web-discuss@googlegroups.com, or just you know, start by emailing me at animohan@google.com. See you all. Bye.